When I was 13, my mom told me to stop calling my father Dad. She said he was a murderer. 5 months later, she got engaged to a man named Derek and demanded I call him Daddy instead. But what nobody knew was that I was still secretly talking to my real father in prison, and one hidden journal in our attic would prove that they're wrong. Man had been locked up all along. I was 13 years old when my mother decided she could replace my father. His name was Michael Parker. The man she wanted to replace him with was Derek Collins. Dad had been in prison for 5 months when Mom announced their engagement. 5 months. That was all it took. 5 months after my father was convicted of manslaughter. Mom stood in our kitchen in Columbus, Ohio, smiling like she had just won the lottery. Derek stood beside her with one arm around her waist. "We have exciting news," she said. I already knew. I could tell from the way she was smiling. "We're getting married." I stared at her, then at him, then back at her. Nobody said anything. Finally, Mom frowned. "Emily?" "Okay." That wasn't the reaction she wanted. "That's it? What am I supposed to say?" She crossed her arms. "You could be happy for us." I looked directly at Derek. He smiled, the same fake smile he always used, the one that never reached his eyes. "I'm not." The smile disappeared. Ma's face tightened immediately. "Emily, enough." "No." The word slipped out before I could stop it. "You've known him for 5 minutes." "It's been months." "Dad's only been gone 5 months." The room went silent. Mom looked away first. Derek didn't. His eyes stayed on me, watching, studying, like he was trying to figure something out. Finally, Mom spoke. "Micah is never coming back." "Yes, he is. He's a convicted killer." I stood up so fast, my chair nearly tipped over. "No, he isn't." Without another word, I walked upstairs. Mom shouted after me. I ignored her. I locked myself in my bedroom and cried for almost an hour. Not because of the engagement, not even because of Derek, because deep down I knew something was wrong. Something about Dad's case had never made sense. And every day that passed made me believe that even more. My father wasn't violent. Anyone who knew Michael Parker would tell you that he worked as assistant manager at a sports bar. Downtown. Long hours, terrible pay, constant stress, yet he still somehow managed to coach youth baseball every summer. He helped neighbors move furniture, volunteered at church events, fixed people's cars despite knowing almost nothing about cars. That's who he was, which is why the night of his arrest never made sense. I was there. That's what nobody understood. I actually saw what happened. Well, part of it. The sports bar had been packed that night. College football season. Wall-to-wall customers' dad was running around trying to keep everything under control. Around 10 o'clock, he headed toward the men's restroom. I barely noticed, eh? Few minutes later, everything changed. I heard shouting, then screaming, then Dad came running out, covered in blood. His face looked completely terrified. Not guilty, terrified. "Call Joyoyo." I still remembered his voice. Somebody called 911. People panicked. Staff rushed toward the restroom. A crowd formed. Police arrived. Paramedics arrived. And somehow, within an hour, Dad was being led away in handcuffs. I never understood why. The police barely questioned anyone. The media immediately called him a killer. The prosecutors built a case almost overnight. The jury believed it, and just like that, my father disappeared. The first few weeks after Dad went to prison were awful. Then Derek appeared. At first, he only visited occasionally. Then he started staying for dinner. Then entire weekends. Then suddenly, he practically lived with us. Mom acted like nothing was strange about that. I thought it was incredibly strange, especially because Derek seemed way too interested in me, not in a normal way, in a way that made my skin crawl. One evening, we were eating dinner when he suddenly smiled and said, Emily's growing up fast. I kept eating. Mom smiled. I know. She's becoming quite a young lady. Something about the way he said it made me uncomfortable. Mom seemed flattered. I wanted to leave the table. A few weeks later, I finally told her. Derek makes me uncomfortable. She laughed. Actually laughed. Emily, don't be dramatic. I'm serious. He cares about you. No, he doesn't. You're just upset because you miss your father. That conversation ended exactly how every conversation about Derek ended, with Mom taking his side. Every time. Without fail. And after that, things started getting worse. A lot worse. One night I woke up because somebody was standing in my doorway. At first, I thought I was dreaming. Then I realized it was Derek, just standing there, watching. I sat upright immediately. What are you doing? He smiled. I was checking on you. At 2 o'clock in the morning. Without saying anything else, he walked away. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next day, I emailed Dad. For the first time, I told him everything. About Derek, about Mom, about the way things felt wrong. 3 days later, I received a reply. It was longer than usual, much longer. Most of it was normal father advice. But one sentence stood out. One sentence that would eventually change everything. If you ever need answers, check behind the old radiator in the attic. At the time, I had no idea what it meant. I would soon find out. And when I did, my entire world would change. For weeks, I couldn't stop thinking about Dad's message. Every time I checked my email, those words stuck in my head. Check behind the old radiator in the attic. At first, I thought maybe it was some random memory. Maybe prison was affecting him. Maybe he had simply written the wrong thing. But deep down, I knew better. Dad didn't do things by accident, especially not when he wrote to me. The opportunity finally came one Friday night. Mom and Derek were going out to dinner. Some expensive restaurant Derek couldn't stop bragging about. The second their car disappeared down the street, I grabbed a flashlight and climbed into the attic. The attic smelled like dust and old wood. Boxes were stacked everywhere. Christmas decorations, old clothes, broken furniture. My heart pounded as I searched. Finally, I found the old radiator. It sat against the far wall, rested and forgotten. For a moment, I hesitated. Then I reached behind it. My fingers touched plastic. I froze. Slowly, I pulled out a waterproof bundle. Inside was a leather journal. My father's journal. I nearly dropped it. Dad had hidden it years ago. The first page contained his handwriting. There was no doubt. I flipped through several entries. The dates went back almost 2 years. Then I found something that made my stomach drop. March 12th. I caught Jennifer talking to Derek again behind the bar tonight. They didn't see me. I don't know how long this has been going on. I stared at the page. Again and again. Mom and Derek? 2 years ago? That was long before Dad's arrest. Long before Mom claimed she had even met Derek. My hands started shaking. I kept reading. The entries became more frequent, more worried, more suspicious. Dad believed Mom was having an affair, and Derek had been around our family far longer than anyone admitted. Then I heard a car door slam outside. My blood turned to ice. They were home. Early. I shoved the journal under my shirt. My hands were trembling so badly, I could barely move. Heavy footsteps echoed downstairs. A door opened, then closed. Mom's voice drifted through the house. Derek's answered. I rushed toward the attic ladder. Too late. A shadow appeared below. Then Derek's face. His eyes immediately locked onto mine. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Something changed in his expression. Like he already knew. What are you doing up here? His voice sounded calm, but there was something dangerous underneath it. I forced myself to smile. Looking for old stuff? What stuff? My childhood toys. He climbed into the Attic. Slowly, deliberately, like a predator approaching. Wounded prey. I backed away, trying not to let the journal show beneath my shirt. His eyes swept across the room, then settled on the disturbed dust near the radiator. I saw the exact moment he noticed it. His jaw tightened. "What were you really doing?" My heart nearly stopped. "I told you." His gaze didn't move. Then suddenly he smiled. The fake smile. The one I hated. "You're a terrible liar, Emily." He grabbed my arm. Hard. Pain shot through my shoulder. I gasped. "Let's go downstairs." That night, I couldn't sleep. The journal lay hidden inside my pillowcase. Every time I moved, I could feel its corners pressing against my cheek. I spent hours reading it with a flashlight. Entry after entry, page after page. Dad had been documenting everything. Strange phone calls, secret meetings, missing money, arguments, suspicious behavior. And Derek's name appeared everywhere. The further I read, the more frightened I became. Dad hadn't simply suspected an affair. He believed Derek was manipulating Mom, using her, controlling her. The final entries were the worst. Dad wrote that he planned to confront Derek. The last entry was dated 3 days before the murder. After that, nothing. The journal ended. The next morning, Derek wouldn't stop staring at me, at breakfast, in the car, even when Mom wasn't looking. Every time I glanced up, his eyes were already on me, watching, calculating, waiting. He knew I had found something. He just didn't know what yet. I needed help, real help, not from teachers, not from friends, someone I could trust. That's when I thought about Tom Reynolds, Dad's best friend. They had known each other since high school. Tom owned an auto repair shop on the west side of Columbus. Growing up, he was practically family. Then after Dad's conviction, Mom cut him off completely. She claimed he encouraged Dad's bad decisions. I knew that wasn't true. Tom was one of the best people I'd ever met. Finding his number wasn't difficult. Mom had forgotten an old address. Book in the kitchen. I called him from a pay phone outside school. My hands shook so badly, I almost dropped the receiver. He answered on the third ring. "Reynolds Auto. Tom?" Silence. "Then Emily?" I nearly cried hearing his voice. "Can we meet? What happened?" "I think I found something." The next afternoon, I told Mom I was staying after school for a study group. She barely looked up from her phone. Derek did. His eyes narrowed immediately. "What study group?" "History." "Who's in it?" I named 3 random classmates. He kept staring, like he was trying to catch me lying. Finally, he nodded. I left before he could ask anything else. Then I waited outside the public library. His old pickup truck looked exactly the same. The moment I climbed inside, he knew something was wrong. I showed him the journal. His expression changed immediately. Page by page, he read. Silence filled the truck. Then he looked at me. "Your dad was right." "What?" Something never felt right about that case. He stared out the windshield, thinking, processing. Then he said something that changed everything. "We need evidence." "Isn't this evidence?" "It helps." He tapped the journal. "But suspicions aren't enough." He looked directly at me. "If Derek framed your father, we need proof." For the first time since Dad's arrest, I felt hope. Real hope. Tom continued. "There were people working that night." "What do you mean?" "The night of the murder." His eyes hardened. "Let's find out what they remember." I left the library that day. I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Optimism. For the first time, Dad's innocence wasn't just a belief. It was becoming an investigation. And neither Derek nor Mom had any idea what was coming. Over the next 2 weeks, Tom and I became investigators. At least that's what it felt like. Every afternoon after school, I'd meet him at the library or his repair shop. The journal stayed hidden in a waterproof bag inside my school locker I didn't trust. Leaving it at home anymore. Derek had become increasingly suspicious. He searched my room constantly, asked questions about everything, checked my phone whenever he could. I knew he was looking for something. He just didn't know what. Yet. Tom started contacting people who had worked at the sports bar the night of the murder. Most didn't remember much. It had been months. People moved on. Memories faded. But not everyone's. One afternoon he introduced me to Marcus Hill. Marcus had worked security at the bar. He was huge. At least 6'4", built like a linebacker, but surprisingly gentle. After listening to my story, he sat quietly for several seconds. Then he frowned. I remembered Derek. Tom looked up immediately. You do? Marcus nodded. Yeah. How? He was there that night. My heart skipped. What? Marcus leaned forward. I remember because he wasn't a regular. The room suddenly felt smaller. You're sure? Positive. He folded his arms. I saw him walk toward the man's restroom. Tom and I exchanged looks. Neither of us spoke. Marcus continued. Then Micah went in a few minutes later. Did you tell police? His face darkened. They never asked. The words hit me like a punch. They never asked. Few days later, we met. Rachel Foster, the bartender who had called 911. Rachel remembered Derek too. Not just that night. For weeks before it, he kept asking about Michael. Tom frowned. What kind of questions? What shifts he worked? When he arrived? When he left? I felt a chill run down my spine. Rachel shook her head. I thought he was weird. Why? She laughed nervously. Because he acted like he was studying him. For the first time. Dad's journal wasn't the only thing. Pointing toward Derek. There. We're witnesses now. Real witnesses. People who remembered. People who could testify. And that terrified me because if we were getting closer to the truth, Derek probably knew it too. The biggest break came from George Sullivan, the sports bar manager. George had known Dad for nearly 10 years. He never believed Michael Parker was a murderer. Not completely. When Tom explained what we had discovered, George became very quiet. Then he said something none of us expected. There might be footage. Tom nearly dropped his coffee. What? George nodded. The police only collected footage from the main cameras. What are you saying? There was a backup system. My pulse accelerated. A backup system? George stood up. It recorded the whole way near the restrooms. Tom stared at him. Do you still have it? George hesitated, then nodded. I think so. The following evening, we met at George's house. I don't think I've ever been more nervous. The old hard drive took forever to load. The laptop hummed loudly. Nobody spoke. Finally, the video appeared. A timestamp filled the corner. 9:47 p.m. The hallway outside the men's restroom. My heart pounded. Then we saw him. Derek. Walking casually toward the restroom. Tom immediately paused the video. The timestamp was clear. Saul Dodian Situtufant. He entered, then disappeared. Inside. We watched in silence. Several minutes passed. Then Derek emerged. Dodian Worshayifin. p.m. He checked his watch, looked around, and walked away 1 minute later. Dad entered. 9:52 p.m. 30 seconds later, he came running out covered in blood, exactly as I remembered. Exactly. Nobody spoke for a long time. The evidence wasn't perfect. It didn't show the murder, but it showed opportunity. It showed Derek had been in Cypher's. It showed he lied, because according to police records, Derek claimed he'd spent the entire evening at home watching television. The footage proved Otherwise, Tom copied the files onto 3 separate USB drives. Then a fourth. Just in case. As he worked, he looked at me. Emily, what? We're getting close. I nodded. I knew, and that's what scared me, because getting close to the truth meant becoming dangerous to Derek. By then, Derek was practically obsessed with me. Everywhere I went, he seemed to know. Every conversation felt monitored, every movement watched. Then one night, he finally stopped pretending. I woke up around midnight. Someone was sitting on my bed. At first, I thought I was dreaming. Then I saw him. Derek. The hallway light illuminated half his face. My stomach dropped. What are you doing? He smiled. Not the fake smile. Something worse. Something cold. I know you've been meeting people. My heart stopped. What? I know about Tom. Silence. My mouth suddenly felt dry. Derek leaned closer. I also know you've been asking questions. I couldn't breathe. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he said something I'll never forget. People get hurt when they don't mind their own business. A chill ran through my entire body. What does that mean? He shrugged. Accidents happen. His voice sounded casual. Almost cheerful. Cars crash. He paused. People fall downstairs. Another pause. Gas leaks. I understood immediately. The threat wasn't aimed at me. It was aimed at Mom, at Tom, at anyone helping me. The next afternoon, I told Tom everything. His expression turned serious. Very serious. Then we're out of time. What do you mean? He rubbed his forehead. It means Derek knows we're getting close. The realization settled heavily between us. For months we'd been uncovering clues. Now Derek knew, and desperate people did desperate things. That evening, things became even worse. Mom announced she and Derek had moved the wedding date. Instead of next year, it would happen next month. My stomach sank. Derek smiled across the dinner table, watching me, waiting for a reaction. I gave him nothing. But inside, I was terrified, because I knew exactly what this meant. He was accelerating his plans, and if we didn't stop him soon, he would become impossible to remove from our lives. That night, I emailed Dad. I told him everything. The witnesses. The footage. The threats. The wedding. Hours later, I received a reply. The shortest email he'd ever sent. Just 7 words. Be careful. You're closer than you think. I read it 3 times, then shut my laptop. Outside, thunder rolled across Columbus. Inside, I couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was about to happen. And I was right. The following week, everything fell apart. Derek found the journal. I still don't know exactly how. Maybe he searched my locker. Maybe he followed me. Maybe I simply got careless. Whatever happened, one Friday morning, I walked into the kitchen and froze. The journal was sitting on the table. Derek was flipping through it. Mom sat beside him, confused, concerned, and completely unaware of what she was looking at. My heart stopped. What's that? I asked. Derek smiled. The moment I saw that smile, I knew. He had won. Or at least he thought he had. Your mother and I have been discussing your recent behavior. Mom sighed heavily. Emily, this has gone too far. I looked at the journal, then at Derek, then back at Mom. What are you talking about? Derek tapped the cover. These stories. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He continued. Emily has been writing fantasy scenarios about me. Mom looked disappointed. Not angry. Disappointed, which somehow hurt more. Derek says you've become obsessed with blaming him for your father's mistakes. I stared at her, speechless. Dad wrote that. Mom shook her head. No, honey. Yes, he did. Please stop. She sounded tired, like she genuinely believed I was losing my mind. Derek placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. The gesture made me sick. Then he delivered the final blow. "I think Emily needs professional help." Mom nodded slowly. "I've been thinking the same thing." My blood ran cold. "What?" "A boarding school." I couldn't breathe. Mom continued. "Just for a while." "No." "It specializes in troubled teenagers." "No." "It'll help you." "No." I practically screamed it, but the decision had already been made. A boarding school in Montana. No phones, no internet, no visitors for 6 months. Exactly the kind of place where inconvenient people disappeared. I knew immediately this was Derek's plan, and if I went there, everything would be over. Dad would stay in prison, Derek would marry Mom, and nobody would ever know the truth. The next morning, I ran. Not forever. Just long enough to reach my friend Emma Walker's house. Emma's mother was at work. Emma let me use her phone. I called Tom immediately. When he answered, I started crying. The words poured out. The journal. The boarding school. Everything. Tom listened quietly. Then he said, "We're out of time." I already knew that. We agreed to meet later that day. I hung up, then headed home. That turned out to be a mistake. Derek was waiting for me, standing on the front porch, arms crossed, expression unreadable. The second I saw him, I knew I was in trouble. "Where were you?" My mouth went dry. "Walking." He grabbed my arm. Hard, too hard, and dragged me inside. Mom wasn't home. The house was empty. For the first time in months, Derek stopped pretending. Completely. The mask disappeared, and the monster underneath finally showed itself. "You've caused me a lot of problems." His voice sounded different, colder, crueler. I backed away. He stepped closer. "You should have gone to Montana quietly." Fear twisted in my stomach. Then something unexpected happened. I remembered Emma's phone. Steel recording. Hidden inside my jacket pocket. I had forgotten to stop the voice recorder after calling Tom. Derek had no idea. Neither did I. Not yet. For the next several minutes, he ranted, completely unaware, completely careless. And then he confessed, not intentionally, but he did. He admitted he had planned everything. The affair, the manipulation, the framing, everything. According to him, Dad was simply an obstacle, a problem, someone standing between him and the life he wanted. The murder victim had interrupted his plan. Wrong place, wrong time. So Derek killed him, then framed Dad. Only this was real, and I was standing 5 feet away, terrified. Then the front door opened. Mom walked in. She had forgotten her purse, and she heard everything, every word, every confession, every lie collapsing around her. The grocery bag slipped from her hands. Oranges rolled across the floor. The color drained from her face. Derek turned, saw her, and immediately realized what had happened. For the first time, everything happened fast after that. Mom listened to the recording. Twice. Then 3 times. By the end, she was crying so hard she could barely breathe. Tom arrived 15 minutes later. He brought the security footage, witness statements, connecting pieces, watching Mom's entire reality collapse. By midnight, she finally agreed. We called the police. Detectives arrived shortly after. They listened carefully, watched the footage, reviewed the statements, examined the journal, and when they finished, one detective looked at his partner and nodded. An arrest warrant was issued that same night. Derek ran. Of course he did. But he didn't get far. 2 days later, police found him hiding in a motel outside Dayton. He tried denying everything. Then the evidence started piling up. The security footage, the confession, the witnesses, the forensic inconsistencies. One by one, every lie fell apart. Eventually, Derek broke. and confessed, fully. 3 weeks later, my father walked out of prison. I still remember standing outside Marion Correctional Institution, waiting, watching, hoping. The gates opened, and there he was, Michael Parker. My dad. He looked thinner, older, more tired, but he was smiling. The second he saw me, he started crying. So did I. I ran toward him, and he wrapped his arms around me. For the first time in nearly a year, I felt safe. The trial took months. Derek Collins was convicted of murder, conspiracy, fraud, and multiple additional crimes uncovered during the investigation. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. My father's conviction was officially overturned. His record was cleared completely. The state later compensated him for wrongful imprisonment, but no amount of money could return the months we lost. Mom and Dad divorced. Some wounds were simply too deep. Mom spent years trying to rebuild her life and make amends. I eventually learned to forgive her, not because she deserved it, because I deserved peace. Tom remained part of our family. Without him, none of us would have survived. Dad eventually started dating Rachel Foster, the bartender who had testified at the trial. She made him laugh again. Rio laughs. The kind I hadn't heard in years. I graduated high school with honors, then earned a scholarship to study criminal justice. After everything we'd been through, I wanted to help people who had been failed by the system, people like my father. Sometimes I still think about the night I found that journal behind the radiator. One small decision, one heating notebook, one choice to keep looking for the truth. That's all it took to change everything. If I had ignored Dad's message, Derek might have won. My father might have spent the rest of his life behind bars, and I might have spent mine wondering what really happened. Instead, the truth came out. Not because it was easy, not because the system worked perfectly, but because someone refused to stop searching for it. And that someone was me.